Hey everyone. Tonight I've got 3 stories pulled from the kind of threads you only read with the lights on. As always, I'll change names and small details for privacy. But the fear? That part stays the same. Let's get into it. Story 1. The note under my door. I lived in an old brick building just outside the city center. Not the kind of place with charm. The kind of place with hallways that always smelled faintly of damp carpet and cheap cleaner. The kind of place where you learn to ignore sounds, because if you don't, you never sleep. I was 24, working late shifts at a call center, and I'd just gotten that apartment because it was the only one I could afford without roommates. The landlord was the cash-only type. The lock on my door was older than I was. But I told myself it was fine. I told myself I'd just keep to myself. The first note showed up on a Wednesday. I got home a little after midnight, kicked my shoes off, and saw a folded scrap of paper on the floor right inside my door. At first I thought it was an old receipt. Then I remembered I'd locked the door when I left. The note was written in blocky, careful handwriting. It said, "Don't turn on the hall light. He likes the light." I stared at it so long my eyes started to water. Then I did what anyone would do when their brain refuses to accept reality is less than #0. 6# is greater than I laughed. Just once. A small, stupid laugh. Because what else was it supposed to be? A prank. A neighbor being weird. Some kid in the building trying to scare people. I checked the lock. It was still latched. Chain still on. I checked the hallway through the peephole. Empty. Just that long, dim corridor with the flickering ceiling light near the stairwell. I put the note on my kitchen counter like it was a spider I didn't want to touch. Then I went to bed. I didn't sleep much. The next day, I asked the woman across the hall if she'd seen anything. Her name was Marla. Mid-50s. Smoked like a chimney. She had a chain lock like mine, plus one of those extra deadbolts installed crooked, like she'd done it herself. She squinted at the note. "That's not funny," she said. "I didn't write it," I told her. She looked past me into my apartment, like she was checking if anyone else was there. Then she lowered her voice. "You new here?" 3 months. She nodded slowly, and her eyes drifted to the hallway light switch, the one in the shared corridor by the stairs. "Sometimes," she said, "people leave notes in this building. Like warnings." I waited for her to elaborate. She didn't. That night, I got home around 1 a.m. The hallway was darker than usual because the ceiling light had finally died. I walked fast, keys between my fingers like the dumb self-defense advice everyone jokes about. Halfway down the hall, I heard a soft click behind me. Not a footstep. Not a door. A click like a switch. The hall light at the stairwell turned on. Bright, harsh, fluorescent. It threw my shadow forward in a long, distorted shape. I froze. Then, slowly, I turned my head. The stairwell door was cracked open by maybe an inch. And there was something. Someone? Standing behind it, pressed to the gap. I couldn't see a face. Just the outline of a head and one shoulder. But I could see one thing clearly. An eye. Watching me through that inch-wide opening. My throat went dry. I wanted to run, but running meant turning my back. So I did the only thing my body would let me do. I walked. Fast. Steady. I didn't take my eyes off that crack in the door until I reached my apartment. I shoved my key in the lock, fumbled it, finally got it. I slipped inside and slammed the door, engaging every lock like my life depended on it. I stood there for a long second, breathing through my nose, listening. No footsteps, no knock, no sound at all. I told myself I imagined the eye. I told myself the light turning on was a timer. I told myself the stairwell door was just settling. Then I looked down. Another folded note sat on the floor inside my door. I hadn't seen it when I came in. I would have stepped on it, which meant it had been slid in after I shut the door. My hands started shaking as I picked it up. This time the handwriting was messier, like whoever wrote it had been in a hurry. It said, "He knows you saw him. Don't look again." I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch with a kitchen knife and my phone, waiting for sunrise like it was a rescue. When morning came, I called the landlord. He answered like I'd woken him up. I told him someone was breaking into the hallway and leaving notes under my door. I told him I'd seen someone in the stairwell. He sighed. "Probably kids," he said. "There are no kids here," I said. "Then it's the drunk from 2B, he said. "I'm calling the police," I told him. He laughed softly. "For a note?" Then he hung up. The police did come, eventually. 2 officers walked the hallway, checked the stairwell, shrugged. No forced entry. No cameras in the building. They took the notes in evidence bags like they were humoring me. One officer asked if I had enemies. I told him the closest thing I had to an enemy was my supervisor at work. He gave me a polite smile like that explained everything. That night, I did something I should have done the first time. I didn't go straight home. I parked across the street and watched the building. I sat there for almost an hour. Nothing happened. Then, a shape moved behind the lobby window. I expected to see a tenant. Instead, I saw a man I'd never seen before. Tall, thin, wearing a dark hoodie with the hood up even though it wasn't cold. He didn't leave the building. He just stood in the lobby, half hidden by the mailboxes, like he was waiting for something. And then he turned his head, slowly, and looked directly toward where I was parked. The street lamp reflected off the glass, and still, I could feel it. That sensation of being seen. Not glanced at. Seen. He lifted one hand. Not a wave. More like a small, precise gesture. As if he was pressing an invisible button. The lobby lights went out. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I was going to throw up. I started the car, pulled away, and I didn't stop driving until I reached a 2-4-hour gas station 3 neighborhoods over. I called Marla from the gas station. She answered on the second ring like she'd been waiting. "Did you see him?" she asked. My mouth opened, but no sound came out for a second. "Yes," I finally said. "I saw him." Marla exhaled slowly. "Listen," she said. "You need to stay somewhere else tonight." "What is he?" I asked. "Not a ghost," she said, "is less than #0. 4 hashes greater than like that was somehow comforting. He's a man that used to live in the stairwell. For months." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. "He got in through the basement window," she said. "Lived down there, and in the stairs. He'd come out at night. Steal packages. Try doors." "Try doors?" "Unlocked doors," she said. Then her voice got quieter. "And sometimes locked ones. If he had time." I looked down at my shaking hands. "The notes," I whispered. "That was me," Marla said. My brain lagged behind her words. "You've been leaving notes under my door?" "I've been leaving notes under everybody's door," she said. "I see him sometimes. I hear him. And no one listens until it's too late." I didn't go home that night. I stayed with a friend from work, a guy named Luis, who lived with his girlfriend, and thought I was being dramatic until he saw how pale I was. The next day, I went back in daylight with Luis. We walked the hallway, checked the stairwell door. It was locked with one of those cheap push-button locks. Luis tried it anyway. It opened. Inside the stairwell, the air was colder. The smell hit first. Sweat, old food, and that sour, damp smell like wet clothes left too long. We went down one flight, two, and then, on the landing between the second and first floors, we saw it. A nest. Not like an animal nest. Like a human had tried to build a bedroom out of trash. There was a pile of blankets and coats, flattened like someone slept there. There were empty cans, cigarette butts, and torn open snack wrappers. And there was a cluster of objects arranged neatly in a row, like trophies. Keys. At least 10. Different shapes, different sizes. Some had little plastic tags attached, like from old apartment keyrings. Luis whispered, "What the hell?" I stared at the keys, and a cold understanding settled in my chest. He wasn't just trying doors. He was collecting the ones that worked. We heard a sound above us. A slow shuffle. Something dragging. Luis grabbed my arm and pulled me back up the stairs. We didn't run. We didn't want to make noise. But my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. At the top of the stairwell, we pushed the door open and stepped into the hallway. And that's when I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. My apartment door, the one with the old lock and the chain, was cracked open. The chain was hanging loose, dangling like it had never been latched. I had latched it. I know I had. Luis didn't hesitate. He shoved the door open all the way, and we stepped inside. Everything looked almost normal. My couch, my table, my kitchen counter. Then I noticed my bedroom door. It was closed. I always left it open. Luis whispered my name like he was warning me not to do what I was about to do. But I walked forward anyway. My hand touched the knob. It was warm. I opened the door. The room was empty, but my closet door was open, just a few inches. And taped to the inside of the closet door, facing outward, so I'd see it the moment I looked, was another note. This one said, "You shouldn't bring friends." Now I know his face too. Luis swore under his breath. I backed out of the room and closed the door with shaking hands. We left. We didn't pack. We didn't grab anything but my wallet and phone. We just left. I moved out within a week. I broke the lease. The landlord threatened to sue. I didn't care. 2 months later, I got a message from Marla. A blurry photo taken through her peephole. It showed a man in a dark hoodie standing in the hall, his head tilted slightly toward my old door. The caption she wrote under the photo was short. "He's still here." I don't know what happened after that. Marla stopped answering. And I still, sometimes, when I'm walking home late and a light switches on behind me, feel my skin crawl like something is watching through a crack in a door. Story 2. The delivery. That wasn't mine. I used to work nights at a small warehouse. Nothing fancy, just a place where boxes came in, got scanned, then went back out. The pay was decent, and the night shift meant fewer people. That mattered, because I'd always felt calmer when I could control the space around me. The only problem was the deliveries. Not the ones we handled. The ones that showed up at my apartment. It started with a single package on my doorstep. Plain brown box. No branding. The label had my address, but not my name. It said, "O. Parker." That wasn't me. It wasn't any of my neighbors either, at least not that I knew. I left it by the mailboxes for a few days. No one claimed it. Finally, I called the shipping company. They told me they couldn't take it back without a return number. So I did the dumb thing. I opened it. Inside was a plastic storage bag containing a neatly folded hoodie. Black, cheap material. There was also a small, sealed envelope. The envelope contained a single photograph. It was taken from across the street, slightly zoomed in, showing my building entrance. And in the middle of the frame, clear as day, was me, walking out the door with my backpack over one shoulder. My first thought was, this is a prank. My second thought was, who took this? Because it wasn't a selfie. It wasn't from a friend. It was from across the street, at an angle that meant someone had been waiting. I checked the box again. No note. No explanation. Just the hoodie and the photo. I threw everything away. I double-bagged it, walked it to the dumpster behind the building, and shoved it under other trash like that would somehow erase what I'd seen. 2 days later, another package showed up. Same box. Same wrong name. This time I didn't open it. I carried it straight to the dumpster. When I lifted the lid, the first box was on top of the trash. Not buried, not crushed, placed. My stomach sank because I'd buried it, and there was no way it had just floated to the top. I glanced around the alley. Empty. Quiet. Then I noticed something in the first box that hadn't been there before. A sticky note, bright yellow, stuck to the inside flap. It said, "Don't throw my things away." I slammed the dumpster lid so hard it echoed. That night at work, I couldn't focus. Every beep of a scanner made me flinch. Every time the warehouse door creaked, I looked up expecting to see someone standing there, watching. On my break, I told my coworker Kayla about it. She raised her eyebrows and said, "Maybe it's someone's drop spot." "A drop spot for what?" I asked. She shrugged. "Who knows? People do weird stuff." She meant it casually, but the word drop stuck in my head because it made it sound organized, like someone had a system. The third package arrived on a Sunday. I wasn't home. I was grocery shopping. When I got back, it wasn't on my doorstep. It was inside my apartment, sitting in the middle of my living room floor. I stood in the doorway, keys in my hand, frozen. I knew I'd locked the door. Deadbolt, too. I didn't step inside. I backed away and went straight to my neighbor's door. An older guy named Ron answered. I told him someone had been in my apartment. I told him I needed him to come with me. Ron didn't ask questions. He grabbed a bat from behind his door, no joke, and followed me. We stepped inside together. Everything looked normal. No drawers open, no obvious mess. Just that box sitting there like it belonged. Ron pointed the bat at it. "Don't touch it," he said. "I already threw 2 away," I whispered. Ron's eyes narrowed. He walked to my door and checked the lock. Then he checked the frame. He tapped the deadbolt plate with the bat. The screws were loose. One of them was missing. I stared at it, trying to remember if it had been missing before. I couldn't. Ron leaned in closer. "Someone's been working this," he muttered. Like, slowly. My skin went cold. We called the police. They arrived, looked around, asked questions. One officer opened the box with gloved hands. Inside was another hoodie and another envelope. The photo this time was taken through a window. My window. It showed my living room. And in the corner of the frame, barely visible but unmistakable, was the reflection of the person taking the photo. A hood, a face mostly shadowed, and eyes that looked like they were staring straight through the camera. The officer's expression changed. He didn't shrug this off. He asked if I had anywhere else to stay. I said yes. He told me to pack a bag and leave for the night. Before I left, I checked every window. That's when I found it. The latch on my bedroom window, the one I never opened because it stuck, had fresh scratches around it. Someone had been trying to pry it open. At my friend's place that night, I kept replaying one thought. Why the wrong name? Why O. Parker? The answer came 2 days later. I was at work, scanning boxes, when the shift supervisor called me over. He looked uncomfortable. He said the police had contacted the warehouse. Apparently, O. Parker was a real person. A former employee. Someone who'd been fired the year before for stealing. They never caught him. He'd vanished. And the last address they had for him, the one on file, is less than #0. 7# is greater than was mine. Not because he ever lived there, but because he'd used it. A fake address. A convenient place to receive packages without it leading back to him. My apartment wasn't just a mistake. It was part of his routine. And the moment I disrupted it, he decided to make me part of it too. I moved out that week. I didn't wait for the lease. I didn't wait for the police report. I was gone. A month later, Kayla messaged me at 2 a.m. Just 2 words. He's back. She said someone had been seen on the warehouse security camera, standing outside the loading bay in a hoodie, holding a box, looking straight into the lens like he knew someone would eventually be watching the playback. Story 3. The voice on the baby monitor. My sister and her husband asked me to house sit for a weekend while they visited her in-laws. They had a 1-year-old, and they were new parents. The kind that leave written instructions for everything, from bottle temperatures to which stuffed animal is the correct bedtime one. I didn't mind. I loved my niece. And the house was nicer than my apartment quiet suburb. Big backyard, neighbors that actually waved. The first night went fine. I fed her, bathed her, read a book, put her down. Then I settled on the couch with the baby monitor on the coffee table. The screen showed her crib and a soft green nightlight. Around 11:30, the monitor crackled. I looked at it expecting a whimper. Instead, I heard breathing. Not baby breathing. Adult breathing. Slow, controlled, right up close to the microphone. I sat up. The hairs on my arms rose. Then a voice came through. Quiet, calm, like someone whispering in a library. It said, "She's sleeping so good." My stomach turned. I grabbed the monitor and stared at the screen. The camera view didn't show anyone. Just the crib, the nightlight, shadows in the corners. I told myself it was interference. Some neighbor's device crossing signals. That happens with older monitors sometimes. But the voice was too clear, too close. And it had said she, like it was talking about my niece. I muted the monitor. Then I unmuted it. The breathing was still there. I stood up and walked down the hallway toward the nursery. Every step felt loud. The house was dark except for the faint glow from the monitor screen in my hands. At the nursery door, I paused. I listened. Nothing. No voice. No breathing. Just the quiet hum of the house. I pushed the door open. My niece was asleep, curled on her side, one tiny hand wrapped around the edge of her blanket. The room smelled like baby shampoo. It looked normal. Is less than #0. 9# is greater than. Then I heard it again. The breathing, coming from the monitor in my hand. I looked down. The screen showed the nursery from the camera angle. And in the far corner of the image, where the nightlight didn't reach, a darker shape seemed to shift. Not a person. Not clearly. More like a shadow that didn't belong. I snapped my eyes to the actual corner of the room. Nothing there. Empty. But on the screen, the shadow moved again. My heart hammered. I stepped backward out of the nursery without turning around, pulled the door almost shut, and hurried back to the living room. I called my sister. She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. It was almost midnight. I called her husband. Straight to voicemail. I did the next best thing. I called the non-emergency police line. I told them I was house-sitting and someone might be inside the house. While I waited, I kept the monitor pointed at the nursery view. The shadow in the corner stayed still. But the breathing continued. And then the voice came back. "You're not her mom." The sentence was soft, almost amused, like the voice was smiling. I felt my face go hot. I grabbed a kitchen knife. I hated myself for doing it, but I did. The front porch light clicked on outside. Headlights swept across the windows. 2 officers arrived. They searched the house. Basement, closets, garage. They found nothing. One officer asked to see the monitor. I handed it to him with both hands. He listened. The breathing had stopped. The voice was gone. Just faint static. He gave me the look people give when they think you're panicking. He said it was probably interference. He asked if the monitor was connected to Wi-Fi. I said I didn't think so. He told me to check the brand and model and call my sister in the morning. Then they left. I didn't go to sleep. I sat on the couch with every light in the house on. I kept the monitor right in front of me. At 2:17 a.m., the screen flickered. The nursery view went black for a second, then came back. The nightlight was still on. The crib was still there, but my niece wasn't in it. I stood up so fast my knees hit the coffee table. I ran down the hall and threw open the nursery door. She was in the crib, still asleep, exactly where she'd been. I stared at her for a long moment, then looked back at the corner where the camera was mounted. The camera was tilted, just slightly, like someone had touched it. I didn't adjust it. I backed out of the room and shut the door. When morning finally came, my sister called me back. I told her everything. The breathing, the voice, the shadow, the camera angle. She went quiet. Then she said, "Okay, you're not going to like this." Apparently, the baby monitor times was times connected to Wi-Fi. They'd installed it a month earlier. It came with an app that let them check the camera when they were at work. And 2 weeks ago, my sister had gotten an email notification about a new login. She assumed it was her husband. He assumed it was her. They both ignored it. I felt sick. "Someone hacked it," I whispered. My sister didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Maybe." Because there was more. A neighbor had mentioned seeing a man walking behind their house at night, like he was cutting through yards. And the week before, their back gate had been left unlatched. They thought it was the wind, until it happened again. My sister came home that afternoon and called the police again. This time, they treated it differently. They checked the router logs. They told her to change passwords. They recommended replacing the monitor. They also walked the backyard fence line. And behind the shed, in the narrow strip of trees where the property line met the next yard, they found a flattened patch of grass. Like someone had been lying there, watching the nursery window. There was a crushed soda can, a cigarette butt, and, tucked under a piece of bark like it had been hidden, is less than #0. Eighth hash is greater than a small, torn piece of paper. It had 2 words written on it in shaky letters. So good. They never caught anyone. At least, not while I was still involved. My sister installed cameras. They replaced the locks. They switched to a monitor that didn't connect to the internet at all. But I still think about that voice sometimes. Not angry. Not loud. Just close. Like it belonged in the house. And the worst part is this. When the voice said, "You're not her mom," it wasn't a threat. It was a fact. A reminder that whoever it was, they knew exactly who times should times be there. If you're listening to this and you've got a connected camera in your house, a baby monitor, a doorbell cam, anything, change your passwords, update your firmware, and don't ignore those new login alerts.